Well, here we go back into the conversation. Now, one big, beautiful bill. That's what Donald Trump says he wants. And look, we have to have it. If you don't codify all the things that he's done in the first few weeks of his second term, it's all for naught. All of these executive orders, what is it, about 140? I lose count, but somewhere in that neighborhood. If you don't pass legislation to turn this into law, then it's only as good as the length of his term, and that's not good enough for me. Joining me now, Congressman Kevin Hern. He's the chairman of the Republican Policy Committee and congressman from Oklahoma, Oklahoma 1. Congressman, thank you for being here today.
Great to be with you.
All right, so first we thought it was going to be Memorial Day. Now it's looking more like he might sign legislation on the 4th of July, but we're still on track to sign legislation. And that's, I mean, like I said, if we don't get this done, we being the Republicans in Congress, it was all for nothing. It's important, isn't it?
You're exactly right. The president knows he's only got about 3.5 years left, and he's got to get this policy done. He's got a very clear vision of what his mission is. He wants to return, the sovereignty, make sure it's protected in his country for all future generations. What he started doing with the border, he jokingly said at the southern border, the Democrats wanted new laws, and all they really needed was a new president. And he's demonstrated that the laws in place just needed to be executed. When you see what he's doing right now, trying to restore our economic prowess around the world with his tariffs and bringing people to the table to renegotiate deals that have been, just allowed to slip away over the decades, it's really problematic. And he understands the adversarial position we have with China, somebody that, a country like we've never seen before in our history of our country.
I heard Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana yesterday say he thinks, and I believe this to be true, I'll get you to weigh in on this, that China can't hold out. Look, right now I'm looking at it manifests that say shipping of Chinese products into America down 30%, 40% in some places. They can't survive without shipping to America. Factories are closing in China. People are unemployed. The natives are restless, as they say. China is going to have to come to terms with the fact that America's bigger and stronger economically, and they're going to have to play ball, aren't they?
Well, they are. I mean, if you think about some of the things that they manufacture that could be manufactured elsewhere, we jokingly say, you won't be able to get your political buttons anymore because they're all made in China, or your tennis shoes or your T-shirts. But they're moving quickly to other, developing nations, and even coming back to Central America, which really strengthens our Western Hemisphere, our economic relationships. But to your point, China manufactures. The only way they can survive is they have to sell. Meaning the United States of America, are the largest consumer of Chinese products. If we stop buying, they can't manufacture, and then they have a real problem economically. Today, China and the president are meeting together, his team. We know right now that their growth is slowing very quickly, that manufacturing facilities in China have stopped producing. And, we're seeing the real impact on China, much more so than we are on the United States of America.
Congressman, just a couple of weeks ago, if I listened to the Democrats or the mainstream corporate media, they were telling me April's going to be the worst month ever and since 1932, and the markets are in free fall. It was all doom and gloom. It was panic porn, frankly. The markets today are going to open up a couple of hundred points. The Dow's back up over 41,000. The total losses, most of that has been recaptured. Not quite back to where we were, but look, the fear over tariffs and all that fear-mongering has gone nowhere. It looks like the economy is in pretty good shape. Inflation's 2.4%. Unemployment's 4.2%. The jobs report of last week, 177,000, better than expected. The fundamentals are there. So if we get a deal with China and the EU and Canada and Mexico, the tariffs come down, we get a reduction in interest rates, this economy, by the end of this year, could be going great guns, couldn't it?
It could, and certainly, again, I think the president's main desire here is to make sure we sort of reorder and put back in place what's unraveled very quickly in just 20 plus years with China being in the World Trade Organization, when we voted to let them in thinking they would be a good democracy to come into the global economy, and they've been nothing but destructive and disruptive. And so it's our turn to reset the place of where we're at as an economic superpower. Again, putting tariffs on certain nations in Asia so that we can force certain products to be made back in Central America, restore our relationships with Central America economically and South America, of which, by the way, that China is the most favored trading partner in all of South America now. And so we've got a real problem in our own Western Hemisphere where, what we know and the president knows is that we have to restore our alignment of how we're going to look at great power competition around the globe that we haven't seen, since we were much younger. And again, China has a GDP like ours, very close. And then third place is, a tie with Germany and Japan, which is some $16 trillion less. So right now, China is the play.
Discussing about voting to let him in, I have a bit of a question for you here. A lot of people gave Donald Trump a lot of grief for commenting that Canada should be the 51st state. Of course, we saw the Prime Minister, Mark Carney, in the Oval Office yesterday saying a lot of nice things to Donald Trump, a lot different than what he said on the campaign trail. A lot of people criticized Trump for the Liberals winning in Canada again, but I submit this for consideration. Maybe that was the plan, because Alberta has now announced there will be a vote to separate from Canada in 2026. Alberta becomes a free player, a free agent, if you will. We'd like to do business with Alberta, wouldn't we? Is that what the plan was the entire time from Donald Trump? Was there a method to his madness, sir?
Well, as I've shared with people, concerned about the Canadian conversations, Greenland and Panama, President Trump, again, wants to make sure that we keep pushing back on China and their economic movements that they're doing in North America, in Central America, in South America. Greenland is a place where China just recently was booted out by Greenland because they knew that we caught them allowing China to come in and drill for rare earths and minerals, and they kicked them out. Canada is so dependent on exporting. If not for us moving a lot of our automobile production, parts production to Canada, what would they really have other than dairy cows and trees? And so all of this matters a lot. And as the president has said, as Secretary Besson has said, Commerce Secretary Lutnick has said, until Mexico and Canada start complying with the USMCA agreement and stop allowing this egregious action of China and other Asian countries to come in duty-free, we're going to continue to keep the tariffs on.
Yeah, he said that's just the way it is. He made that comment yesterday in the Oval Office. But I come back, would we entertain the idea of Alberta coming into the United States if they vote to secede? That's a real question.
Sure. Oh, you bet. I mean, again, I'm well aware of that vote, and I think they're sending a message to the rest of the liberal Canada that we're tired of this. We don't want to live in fear. We need the protection of the United States of America. We want the economic prosperity of America, and we're going to do what we need to do as a body. And so I think it's going to send a really big, strong message that people value their freedoms. They want economic growth, and they're not seeing that in Canada.
And the whole net zero idea from Mark Carney is a fool's errand, is what they're saying, from Alberta all the way to Ottawa. Congressman, greatly appreciate you being here. I do. Kevin Hern from Oklahoma, everybody. Thank you for your time, sir.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
There you have it. Oklahoma 1, which is Tulsa, by the way. Beautiful city. I told him that beforehand. I've been to Tulsa. It's a great town. It really is. Dates all the way back to J. Paul Getty and all that Getty oil money. Energy money. Sound familiar? Right. Oklahoma 1. Kevin Hern, good man. We'll take a break and be right back.